Blessed love and peace. We're gonna do an addendum to the previous joint. How you doing, bro? All right. We're doing an addendum to the previous joint from yesterday. The first addendum to it is an update because just minutes after the previous joint that I shared about 12 hours ago, there's a CHPD police cruiser that pulls up, and we have a conversation, positive, congenial, actually productive, and beneficial diplomacy. In that conversation, I mentioned the previous challenges in recent months, previous incident of challenge. There's a thing here, I scratch myself, haha, interesting. A couple months ago. So I discussed that because, anyways, I'll say some of the gist of it. The police officer describes recognizing who I am just by seeing me for a number of years, being the dude that does this, and says that he's very friendly, smiling, and that's the first thing he mentions. Like, oh, hi. He says, he gives me his name. I tell him my name. And he says, yeah, I've seen you around years and years. And you're always saying hi, And so, very friendly. We have a conversation, and I communicate that, and that's what brought up the topic about why I don't do this to the popo in recent weeks after the challenging incident. So I explained to what happened. And he recognized that, and he's like, yeah, dude, it is what it is. So anyways, we have a positive conversation about policing, and the notion of being part of the community, respect, and additionally, so I mean, obviously all the positives get solved in one thing, but it was a positive conversation. So, and then I asked, the reason I actually solicited him to talk with me, because to talk about the topic of pedophilia, and particularly to discern where pedophilia is on the radar screen of the police force, particularly in the Heights, but just in general, from his frame of reference. And so he communicates like less of an awareness of like what I'm actually referencing, or like where it's coming from, whatever. So I give him some examples of some of the concerns, right, in the village where I live, some incidents that I personally experienced in terms of observing what was happening additionally. And so he seemed to do that process, and he gives me some references, and additionally I mentioned the protocols about not calling the popo, just being candid about that, but at the same time respecting kinfolk who put their lives on the line for the well-being of others, amidst all the disagreements and everything else like that. As I always communicate, there's that continuing respect. Love everybody, and respect the service that any kinfolk is doing in this life, amidst any of the disagreements and everything else like that. So anyways, that was the gist of the conversation, and that was, like I said, just minutes after this joint yesterday. So there's that. Now I'm going to try to endeavor in further succinctly, coherently articulating what I'm talking about in terms of pediocracy, but less about pediocracy, but like what the problems are, what the challenges are in terms of exploitation of children, pedophilia, and the culture of that, the ancient culture of it, and then how it experiences contemporary. So this is what I say. In life, as beings age, mature in life, the body gets feebler, the mind gets feebler. The mind tends to, there's the trajectory of the mind, it tends to mature later in life. Well, let's talk about the body first. Body, mind, heart, and spirit. So right now we're talking about body and mind. The body tends to peak in terms of like maturation, strength, mid-teens, late teens, mid-20s, thereabouts. Everybody's different, but that's basically just by the point somebody reaches late 20s, early 30s, the body starts to be on the decline. And it can be a slow decline, it can be a fast decline. Obviously, people's health, exercise, and everything else has a factor into that. But that's the basic gist of it. And then as the body gets older and older, then the interior, particularly joints, but also the organs and everything else like that, starts to I don't want to say decay, but it gets these type of things. So it is what it is. That's the body. Now the mind, similarly, but the mind tends to peak, to be honest. The mind power tends to peak a little bit later, mid-20s, late 20s, 30s, 40s. And this is discussable, but the consideration is learning is in the early stages of life. But in terms of like processing it and administrating, utilizing that knowledge in an authoritative sense, maybe that's one way of describing it. Like mental authority peaks in 30s, 40s. So like for example, when you see like an athlete with like the top of the line, quote top of the line, haha, how about objectification, much, but just like top of the scale, whatever, in terms of athleticism and bodily strength or whatever else. The athletes, the career of like the stellar athletes tends to be up to the maybe late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s. Some might even get up to like late 30s, maybe even early 40s, and that's pretty much it. The peak tends to be around mid 20s, late 20s for an athlete's career. That's bodily strength. In terms of mind strength, again, and utilizing it in a strong way, we look at like CEOs, politicians, those who are put in positions of authority to utilize the mind in those respects. That tends to peak at about mid 40s, 50s, thereabouts. And again, obviously, there's a variation, just like there's a variation with the body, but that's the general thing. So anyways, all that being said, at some point the mind starts to go, and it's not a matter of just like all of a sudden getting dementia or whatever else, but again, it happens in different ways. So all that being said, at some point in life, when people mature through life, things start to decline in terms of the strength and even energy, and that's where we get into the point about the youth, because the elders within a community gain energy from interaction with youth, with the children, because children, bodily energy, mental energy, many ways, but also there's this. I don't want to compare spiritual energy, because there's strong spiritual energy amongst elders, but it's a different energy, particularly bodily, amongst children and youth. So, all right, let's stay focused. So that's there, and that's just the nature of things. So elders provide youth with guidance about life, how to walk in this earth, how to tread these roads of creation, and the youth intrinsically provide a vibrancy and energy to help the elders in healing, dealing with the organs and joints. And it's not even a matter of like doing anything specifically. It's just like, it's like osmosis type stuff. So that's what it is. Now, there's healthy ways of doing that, and then there's unhealthy ways of doing that. Healthy ways of doing it are when the elders and the children have long-standing, committed relationship with each other, family and village. So when the grandparents interact with the grandchildren, that's healthy. When they know each other's names, are vested in each other's well-being, and additionally, that's healthy exchange. When it's elders, teachers who are trusted, and additionally, that's healthy exchange of energy and strength and knowledge and all that type of stuff. However, when society becomes very fragmented and competitive and individualistic, the methodologies are often unhealthy, whereby it's what I was describing yesterday in terms of corruption, and because oftentimes people who rise through the ranks and additionally are very individualistic, are very competitive, cutthroat, and additionally, and therefore don't have a lot of committed relationships, don't have a lot of healthy relationships. And that's where the heart comes in, because that's what the heart is, it's the relationship. And so, but at the same time are aging and aging and aging, have a strong knowledge, have strong connections in terms of allegiances or whatever else. But in the meanwhile, like the body's becoming further decrepit, and it needs revitalization, it needs healing, it needs that energy, and so that there's a spectrum of unhealthy ways in which that need is endeavored, or the meeting of that need is endeavored. Some of it is through comparatively, and again, it's a spectrum of like from not as bad to like terrible atrocities, and additionally, so not as bad as kind of like foster relationships where I mean, this is not even anything particularly sexual or anything else like that, but just like interaction and communication. So there are these other methodologies and pretenses for interaction and volunteering, charitable things and stuff like that. When these people come in and giving money and giving this that, and the other, and it's they're just so generous, but they're getting the energy, they're getting that lightheartedness, and additionally from that interaction. And so but again, then it goes to the scale of like, again, sexual exploitation, pedophilia, killing of well, it gets very nasty, and in the middle of that, to be honest, we can talk about organ donations, and I know that so many people in society at this moment are involved. I won't say involved because I don't want to be too negative, and it's not a matter of condemnation, but it's a matter of recognizing unhealthiness. Organ donation is a form of cannibalism. When an organ from one person's body, particularly when that transfer involves death, but even when it doesn't, it's just like that culture of it. That it equates to somebody eating the flesh of somebody else as a way of gaining muscle fiber, and additionally, it's consuming the body of another human being. It's cannibalism. And it's scientific, it's medicine. We've got the high-tech advanced health institutions right here. So it's normalized. It's not even normalized, it's authoritative. When people are in the state of Ohio or get a driver's license, people are solicited to be organ donors. And the fact that car accidents is one of the leading causes of death seems to be lost on a number of kinfolks. So that's the leading cause of death, and here people are solicited to sign up to be organ donors. Advertisements on the public bus for blood donations. Anyways, and that's not me saying this. I mean, you can go to the Bible, you can go to the Torah, you can go to the Gospels about the energy, the life being in the blood, and additionally, and so not to eat blood, not to drink blood. And additionally, and people have their different walks or whatever, but anyway, so it's a matter of just recognizing the healthy and unhealthy ways in which the energy is shared, the energy is usurped or otherwise, and so recognizing that, and the different facets of that is, and the different challenges with that, to recognize also that with the advent of technology, communications, these joints, and additionally, that much of the methodology of facilitating these exchanges is through the internet and the energy. And so rather than getting enveloped in some long-winded kind of like endeavor to explain some of those elements, what I'll just say is this: these joints right here are at this moment like the oracle and the oracles where people look for answers, companionship, love, truth, redemption, affirmation, all these things, answers, and receive information, and receive like messages and other types of signals or otherwise. But there's the necessity of feeding it, and all right, all right. It's the oracles, it's the feeding. The oracle provides, these media oracles provide significant amount of information and capabilities of communication, and also capabilities and actualities of exploitation and malfeasance. And as it's not a microcosm of society, but it's as an extension of age-old conventional society, when this methodology of communication, exchange, and relationship is I'll just say plainly that the internet is significantly powered by the energy of youth and children, because it is an extension of society, and society is significantly powered by the energy of children and youth. When family relationships deteriorate within a society, the way in which that energy that children and youth provide to society, that way is those ways are less healthy. Like as I was mentioning, further exploitational, corruption, and additionally, when the families are healthy, when there's strong family experience, health, well-being, comfort, prosperity within the families, communication, and integrity of relationship in the families, then the nature of the exchange and the way that the power of children and youth is shared with the rest of society is increasingly healthy. And so technology simply provides people, or I'll say essentially provides people with a greater advantage in competing against each other. And so it caters, it's gleaned from, it's drawn from, and it caters to the adversarial nature and even the predatory nature within human beings. And when it becomes thus pervasive, particularly within industrialized and post-industrialized society, post-industrialized society becomes increasingly, how do I put this? The oracle is powered by the energy of, is powered by children and youth. And so, okay, that's basically the gist of it. So I mentioned before, like how again, social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and additionally, all these thirst trapping, simping, catfishing, thirsting, and all these other things are built from that culture of exploitation, and that culture of exploitation, man, is well, it may be beneficial to take a pause and let this air for a while, and let this process for a while to be able to articulate it, because it's not easy to talk about. The concentration in these things gets dissipated, and so rather than fumbling and trying to like do it, it's better to share what the gist of it is, let that sit for a second, and then give some time for it to again, like I said, process, for other kinfolk to work on it, and then to respond to that and share some feedback and some further articulation and insight and suggestion and experience, and additionally, that being communicated, the remainder of what I have to share for the moment is basically going back to the notion of how parents compete with the conditions, with the circumstances, where though the parents that decide to go a corrupt route get advantages for doing that. Now, not all parents do that, obviously, and there are parents, again, that tote the straight path additionally, but those parents that do that and are increasingly established and secure and stabilized in that methodology of providing for the children, tend to be significantly established, and thus less susceptible to the same conditions that the parents who are marginalized experience. So for example, like if parents already have money, they already have connections, then they're less susceptible generally to the bribery of pedophilia or pedophiles. And so they can provide the tuition themselves. They have connections themselves already, but there are comparatively fewer parents and families that have that availability. So so then those parents that are without that have a decision of whether to and the money is just one thing. Access to religious influence, and additionally that's another methodology. Access to cultural communities and standing, and additionally, so there are all these things, but in particularly within U.S. society, that is increasingly secular, and additionally, it often just comes down to money and class. So for those that are without that, and the solution for like prosperity in life, and additionally, is actually not even money and class. It's actually particularly through again, first of all, basically discipline. That's the thing, and that discipline is conveyed through a number of ways, either through religious affiliation, and it's taught communally in that respect, and there's less emphasis on money and class. Actually, the emphasis and significant priority is on the discipline. Similarly, within cultural communities, ethnic communities, and further. So the money and class isn't like the end all to be all, and there are other methodologies for securing the future and prosperity of children and families aside from that. But a lot of people, particularly in this country, on this continent, in this hemisphere, who are disconnected significantly from roots and traditions, and additionally, much of the emphasis, and particularly within a science culture, much of the emphasis is on money and class. So when that's the case, then it becomes like a mathematical question of just how much. And when kinfolk feel or experience some type of disadvantage, or perceived being at somewhat disadvantaged or marginalized, then it's a matter of just dealing with that and making the best of it at that moment. And that's serious, like the prospects of a child, that's serious. Or making some compromises and listening to what some of the offers from and the briberies are from the pedophiles or otherwise. So it's a tough situation, and the consideration is for those parents who choose not to do that, choose to not accept the bribery, and additionally, what can be done. Well, as I mentioned previously yesterday, is that it's a matter of calling out the culture, and again, parents are tend to be less motivated to do that because of the consequences. Kinfolk, many pedophiles are in very high places and have a lot of strings, and can do things in very subtle ways, shut things down or otherwise. So there's less of a motivation for doing that, because it's just, we got concerns to think about. But for those who do have the availability, particularly youth students, and additionally, again, as I said, calling out, doing the campaign with the professors, the hashtag campaign of Professors Against Pedophilia. So that's basically where this goes to, this spiel. It's a no-brainer as well. Not against pedophilia. So, and again, it's a litmus test. It's a telltale sign. But the other thing also is this, and this is where I conclude this joint, and this is what I emphasize too. To abstain from being militant in this, and abstain from getting on a high horse about this, abstain from getting some notion of superiority over pedophiles or anybody else, and abstaining from condemning pedophilia or condemning pedophiles or otherwise. It's a matter of recognizing the divine presence within all beings, and how those, even the pedophilia, even the tremendously powerful in convention, who are causing severe atrocities, are suffering. And so it's a matter of having genuine compassion. Yes, we stop the atrocities as much as we can, but not being condemning or just say that, not condemning kinfolk. If cats need to be put away, and additionally, then removed from interaction with elements of society, then that's appropriate. But it's not a matter of saying, oh, those pedophiles are evil. No, not saying that. Pedophilia is wrong, but the kinfolk who commit such atrocities are suffering, and so it's the responsibility of the rest of the kinfolk on this earth to tend to that suffering, and to work it, because often as we understand in the criminal experience, and particularly when it comes to sexual malfeasance, exploitation initially, it's often committed by people who were abused and molested themselves. So it's a matter of recognizing that. And the other thing also is that there are many cultures, there are many natures of criminality that feed off of that negativity, and that even offer up culprits as a way of just feeding the frenzy of animosity, and additionally, because that's just the methodology that the transgressors feed from. So the point is not to be militant. Kinfolk it's too easy to get enveloped in that militance, in that anger and everything else like that, and then that becomes undone, because then people start again, get that high horse, get that sense of superiority, of being better than thou, and everything else like that, and then eventually their own dirt comes out, and then not only do they get undermined and like discredited, but then also the cause itself. It's like, oh, see, that's what these people do, that's what this is about. So it's a matter of compassionately, thoroughly, enduringly calling out the conditions, and just calling out as unhealthy, and particularly recognizing that the victims have are increasingly vulnerable and less fortified in a conventional sense to defend oneself and to speak for oneself at that moment. So that's the other element of it. So again, I'm gonna leave it at that. And to be honest, I've shared a lot about this whole thing about pedophilia in recent days, yesterday and today, even within recent weeks and months. There are a number of reasons why that is. I communicate my own challenges in terms of growing up in a pedophilial culture. I'm not getting into the details at this moment. I've shared it already in previous joints. And even recent experiences of people who are kinfolk, who are trusted leadership, and additionally who are subsequently revealed as committing some of these malfeasances, these atrocities. And I want to be mindful of how much I utilize the word atrocity, but the thing about it is this: there's a sense of betrayal, and again, it's not a matter of like condemning, it's not a matter of like judgment, but like, yo, one starts to question like the motives of like the communication, the motives of the like the love that is communicated, that's expressed, that's shared, and all of that, because, and it's not just a matter in terms of pedophilia, even to be honest with you, with LGBTQ and rainbow Nazis. That's a strong word, and I don't mean to sound humorous, but that's a legitimate term. Again, it's a matter of questioning the motivation, the motives that are involved in the cooperation, the pretenses, and in a society, in life, where people, particularly within certain elements of society, where people are very heady and people are very intelligent, very, very smart in terms of making plans and strategizing and everything else like that. When one finds people who seem to be increasingly genuine, and then it's later revealed that, oh, it's less so, then it's like, oh wow, it becomes further challenging. So and then also, and I'm actually dealing with this at the moment, then it becomes a matter of how much do people, the kinfolk of those kinfolk, have the responsibility of when things are revealed, when a person, when a a culprit admits to certain circumstances, how much of the responsibility is to address that and like help that person because that person is suffering and needs help. But then how much of that is like the manipulation of just continuing to draw and just not intuitively, but intrinsically, just like how it's because again, particularly in the nature of pedophilia, it's very passive, exploitational. I'm trying to think of there's specific terms that people utilize in terms of the manipulation, everything else like that. But it's a very difficult it's very difficult emotional manipulation, and it's very difficult to discern a person's responsibility in terms of helping somebody who's I can say guilty of doing that, when even that help can be and well, I'll say can be just a continuing manipulation accordingly. So anyways, that's part of the difficulty. Ain't nobody better than anybody else. There is behavior that is increasingly healthy and appropriate than other types of behavior. So we focus on optimizing the experience of health and well-being. Honesty, compassion, and modesty are an ancient, eternal methodology for optimizing that experience of balance and well-being, being increasingly open, candid, public, and thorough and enduring with this honesty and compassion and modesty, so that it is increasingly normalized. The culture of piety and the culture of predatory are continual. And so for those who have the proclivity towards piety, let's build. Peace and blessings. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim Jah.